everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon covering UDA ConstructionSuite's scheduling tools. Now today we're going to focus almost exclusively on OnPlan scheduling, which is the built-in Gantt chart scheduling tool that comes with ConstructionSuite in the Pro or Contractor versions of ConstructionSuite and above. To begin with, let's take a look at overviewing ConstructionSuite and seeing some of the areas that our schedules are going to impact as we get started. To begin with, what we're looking at right now is the main Today screen in ConstructionSuite. From here, you'll see a lot of the information that we're working on with recent projects, here in the top left corner, recent or upcoming activities and to-dos, and the financial graph as well. Now, as we've covered in some of the other webinars, the financial graph is going to be populated by the estimates and through QuickBooks integration. But where we're going to be focusing almost exclusively today are the activities and how this information is going to be carried through from schedules that we generate in OnPlan. So to get started, let's look first at some of the options that we have for working with OnPlan schedules. From here, you can actually find the scheduling section available on the navigation panel on your left-hand side. And if you click on the scheduling section, it's going to take us to the OnPlan scheduling hub. Now, from here, you'll have several different templates that you can work off of, and you can find the folders for these templates down in the lower left-hand corner. From here, you can see folders for commercial construction templates, light commercial. We've got some for remodeling and residential projects as well. And if you click on any of these templates, they'll actually show you several different options for getting started with or adjusting some of the templates available through ConstructionSuite. From here, you can always right-click on any of these templates and either launch the template if you're ready to go ahead and get started with the schedule, or you can select the Edit Template option to go through and adjust some of the information that's going to be available within these schedules. Now, the schedules themselves are going to be showing, of course, in the lower right-hand corner, and as you start to apply these schedules to jobs, you'll see the Recent Schedule section up in the top right corner actually populating as we go. Now, to kind of get help starting with some of these schedules in the projects, let's take a step back and go take a look at our projects list as well. And from here, some of the information is going to be carried from the schedules directly into this project overview, and most of this is going to happen right here through the start dates, end dates, and durations that are showing up within these projects. At any point, you can see where some of the information is going to be set up in these jobs, and if you want to take a look at some of the information on the project, you can simply click into the project itself, and this will give us our overview for this job. Now, much like we've covered in the overview webinar, you'll actually find a lot of the files down here in the lower right-hand corner. And this is going to typically include our primary schedule for the job. In this case, it's Schedule-Lot 185, Baldwin Park. Now, you can always tell that this is going to be the primary schedule that we have on this job because it'll always include a check mark here. And it's possible to have several schedules available within any given project. Only the primary, however, is going to be used to populate the activities and the calendar in ConstructionSuite as well. So looking at the activities section in the top portion of this, you'll see 4 different activities that are actually created from the schedule, and we can tell this because the icon next to this is actually the icon used in ConstructionSuite to indicate scheduled subtasks, and that's what all 4 of these seem to represent. Now from here you may end up with several additional activities, some of which might be milestones as represented most commonly by a green diamond, or other activities that you've created yourself. And this information can also be viewed on the whole by switching over to the calendar in ConstructionSuite, which you can find again on the left navigation panel. When we're actually taking a look at the calendar itself, there's several different options for filtering this information down or for viewing additional details. The filter options are always going to be found in the top right corner. Here we have the Filter By option. And if you move over to the left-hand side, you'll actually see a few different tabs for which kind of view you'd like to use in the calendar. Month view, of course, showing the month that we have selected right now. The week view is going to highlight the current week. Day view, obviously, today. And the list view is just going to outline all the tasks over a given period of time. Now, just below these, you'll actually see a couple of different view options, such as the drop-down menu here, where you can hide completed activities, or if this is checked, maybe uncheck it to show all of those. You'll also have a section over here for visible types, which include things like the scheduled subtasks. Now these have been turned off for the moment, so if we check the box to include these again, you'll actually see the calendar populate with all of those scheduled tasks from that Lot 185 project. Now, the information that we're actually showing on this screen right now is going to be a little bit more inclusive as well. Some other projects that we have set up may be lending activities to the calendar as well. So this may be one of the options where you'll want to go up and filter this schedule down to a specific project. Or if you select in here, there's also options to filter down to a contact group, or you can flip it back to all contacts as well to see everybody involved. Now, the tasks themselves right now don't seem to give a whole lot of indication on which jobs or who's going to be working on these. If you'd like to add that information in, you can come up to the Tools menu, go to Options, and select a few of these options like showing the calendar activities with the project names to help us find the difference between all of these different tasks that are showing up on the calendar. So here you can see that some of the tasks are coming from Lot 185 Baldwin Park, others are from Lot 191. And adjusting the information is always going to be done from within the schedules in OnPlan. So I've actually opened up one of the schedules down here at the bottom, and you can see by the little icon that this is going to be part of OnPlan scheduling. So let's open this one up. This is Schedule 185 Baldwin Park. And if we take a look at the schedule itself, you'll see that the layout for this is pretty standard for most Gantt chart scheduling softwares. On the right-hand portion of the screen, we're looking at the Gantt chart, and you can see the dates that I've got along the top and the months and everything. As you move down into the schedule itself, you'll actually see the various different blocks of time that we've set aside for each of the tasks, like design services and permits, lot costs. You'll also see the relationships connecting these tasks together as represented here on the Gantt chart as well. Now, in some of the background for these, you'll actually see some of the dates here, or some of the days are kind of grayed out a little bit. Most of these are going to indicate weekends. We also have one of the dates here representing a holiday, and this is one of the holidays that I've chosen in the option section to exclude as a working day. So I'm not actually going to be working on this September 1st, and this is why this task or this day is also kind of grayed out in this case. Now, one of the nice things about OnPlan is for any task, you can see some of the information for this using the task information section over on the left-hand side. And these tasks may span over weekends, but are still going to keep the same duration based on the number of working days that you've set here. So in this case, permits is a 6-day task, and you can see that those days start on one week, don't include the weekend, and then pick up again after this. So the Gantt chart is always going to give you this representation where you can see these tasks. And as the Gantt chart gets longer and longer, you'll also find down at the bottom a little slide rule here, or a tool to allow you to zoom in or out on the Gantt chart as well, just to make it a little bit easier as you're navigating through the schedule. Now, going back to the left-hand side, we were referring to the task information earlier, and this is where you can see most of the details for the task information. Some of the default columns that we're actually going to have turned on include things like group and task names here. We've got the start dates for each of these tasks, the end dates, the durations, and the predecessors, or the relationships between those tasks. Now, there is a section here that allows you to expand out the task information side, just in case you want to work with some of the additional columns. And these additional columns could be things like the % complete, or resources that we have available either in the schedule or synced over from the estimate as well. Now, you can always adjust which columns are going to be available over on the task information side, simply by right-clicking on any of the column headers that are going to be up here at the top. From here, you can actually turn on or off various different pieces of information. On the task information side, the checkboxes on the left are going to help us with that. On the right side, you can actually check off various different things to include on the Gantt chart. This could include things like the description for the tasks, if you'd like to show that on the Gantt chart, or even other things like, as we scroll down this list, you'll see other options like resources, classifications, and so on. So you can always come into this area and select which columns you would like to make available on the task information, or what you'd like to make available on the Gantt chart. And then it's just a matter of clicking into some of these options to make some adjustments. Now, you might notice as you're looking through the Gantt chart and the task information side that we do have two different options here for task types or icons over here on the Gantt chart. There should be 3 in total, but it looks like we don't have any near the top. There's a couple more as we get down further. But the options on the task information side are going to be either groups, like this top one, or tasks, subtasks as they show up on the calendar, down below this. This is always going to kind of map out into a little bit of a tree, and you can see how some of these are linked into the groups over here on the left side. And our group, planning, in this case has 4 subtasks within it: design services, permits, lot costs, and construction financing. Now I point this out primarily because the groups themselves don't have a modifiable start date, end date, or duration. All of the information populating this group is going to be coming from the tasks within it. If you'd like to change any of the information for the tasks, you can simply click into the cell that you'd like to adjust. And you'll actually see a little option come in for either a drop-down menu for adjusting the start dates or the end dates, or you can simply type into the fields here for things like the durations or the predecessors. Changing the names on your tasks is the same as well. You can come into the cell to actually highlight the name or make any adjustments that you'd like. And this information will also be reflected over on the Gantt chart in line as well. So as you're going through and setting up some of the information here, you'll be able to make these adjustments, have it show up throughout the schedule, and really get the information or the detail showing up for you well. Now in this section as well, over on the Gantt chart, or on the task information rather, you'll also see an icon here, or set of icons, down the left-hand column to represent any activity that's going on for this task. Now some of these icons are going to include things like the check mark to indicate which task is complete. Others may be something a little bit more concerning here to represent resource conflicts or tasks that are overdue or something along those lines. You'll also see some icons here to indicate that there are task notes for these. You'll notice that anytime you hover over one of these, the information about that is going to pop up as a little note for you. So you'll always be able to see what the icon means just by hovering over it with the cursor. And it's going to indicate a lot of the important information about these tasks, so pay attention to these. They'll usually help out pretty well. Now as we scroll down, you'll notice that a lot more of these tasks are also showing up in the red. Same as before, the icon is going to help you recognize what this red text means, and in this case we have resource conflicts. So because we're using the same guys on a few different tasks, ConstructionSuite is going to bring that to our attention in the off chance that these people can't actually do multiple tasks at the same time. In this case it should be relatively easy though. We've got labor and materials for ultimately the same task, so we'll ignore this for the time being and move forward. Now to give you some additional information about these tasks, you can always right-click on one of the tasks and go into Task Information. In the Task Information section, you'll see a lot of the same kind of options that we were looking at within the Task Information section on the left. But you'll also notice that there are some additional tabs along the top to work with as well. We mentioned some of these tasks have notes, and you can actually click into the Notes section to put in some additional detail. Back on the task screen, though, you'll see things like the start dates and the end dates, setting your durations for the tasks, percent complete as well, and some priority and status markers also. Beneath this, you'll see 4 checkboxes for some additional options. Adding in things like an estimated duration or an estimated number of days for the task, you can check that option off. The ASAP feature means that this task is always going to begin at its earliest possible start date, and this tends to come in play a little bit more when we start putting in predecessors, which we'll talk about in a moment. There's also going to be a milestone option here, which is basically treated as a 0-day activity on the calendar or on the schedule, and this information is going to be really useful when you guys are trying to set up milestones for things like inspections, possibly a payment schedule, or if you just want to have some form of indicator in the schedule itself to represent a percent complete on the schedule as a whole. Like at this particular milestone, we're 20% complete with the job, next milestone might be 40, and so on. So this is an easy way for you to go in and set milestones. You can also temporarily deactivate any tasks that you're not sure are going to come into play for this, and this can be used here using the inactive option. Now, as we move out a little bit farther, you'll see some additional tabs in here like constraints for setting up a window of opportunity to complete this task. This tends to be beneficial if you're working with somebody like subcontractors and they say that they can get it done anytime within these bounds. You can set those bounds using the constraints. Notes, as we mentioned, for just putting in a little bit of information about what's going on for the task, either something that you're trying to keep track of or alerting the gentlemen who are actually going to be working on this, or the people who will be working on this, rather. As you move out further, we'll get into the resources section, and this is where you can actually go in and assign who's going to be doing the work or who's going to be providing the materials for this particular task on the schedule. Adding in a new resource in this area allows you to go through and select one of the individuals that you'd like to use for this. This is giving me my Rolodex of all the contacts that I have in ConstructionSuite. And if you notice down here in the right-hand corner, it also shows you 2 months of the calendar and what sort of availability these guys have. Right now it looks like Ajax, or Abernathy Brothers rather, is booked from Tuesday, September 9th, through Sunday, September 14th. And you can see this because it's indicating in red where they're working, and if you click on these, you can actually see up at the top what they're working on. So this gives you an opportunity to recognize before you create any additional schedule conflicts what's going on for these guys and whether or not they're going to be able to do the extra tasks as well. So it looks like in this case it's a lot of footer's labor, and you'll be able to step through it from there. Now as you go through and set up these resources, you can also come out to the Reminders tab and create planning, starting, and custom reminders here. And these reminders are going to be able to send out notifications either by email or text message. If you come under Notify Resources, you'll see those options. And the message that it's going to be sending is right here. This reminder message is going to go out either via text message or via email to the resources on these tasks. And the time in which it does so is going to be available here. So in this case, my custom reminder is going out the day before they should start on this task. And the email itself for the notification is going out at 8 o'clock in the morning. So at 8 a.m., they'll receive an email in their inbox letting them know that they need to be working on this task. And all of the information for the task, like the subject line here, the project, contacts, and start times, these are all going to populate as it's sending them out so that it doesn't restrain you to trying to hard code in times or dates or anything like that. These are the kind of fields that are going to automatically populate so you don't have to remember to put that in or change it if you do have to change the tasks. Now there's some additional information available through here as well, like custom fields that you can set up here, custom information. You'll also be able to go through and set predecessors in this area as well if you'd like. But most of this information I tend to prefer to do directly on the task information section over here on the left. Now the predecessors are going to be one of those important fields that link tasks together, and typically when you're creating these relationships, you're indicating to the schedule what has to be done before this task can begin. Now most of the standard relationship types that we're looking at are going to include the most common, which is a finish to start relationship. In this case, if you look at permits and lot costs, you can see the arrow coming in here so that permits is finishing before lot costs begin. And that's represented on the Gantt chart or on the task information by setting the predecessor to task ID 3, which is the ID for the permits column here. This is what will always allow lot costs to happen after permits, so if there's a delay on the permit section, lot costs is automatically going to update and push itself back. Now, these relationships that you start to create on here can be a little bit more detailed than that. So if you've got two tasks that you'd like to begin at the same time, for example, let's say we want to do the liability and the builder's risk insurance at the same time. In this case, we might set up a special predecessor relationship, which is a start-to-start predecessor, or represented on here by SS. In this case, project liability, if you'll notice on the Gantt chart, has just updated itself to start at the same time as the builder's risk insurance. So same as before, if there's any delays to builder's risk, the project liability insurance is going to be following it along on schedule. Now some of the other, using the same sort of logic, some of the other kind of predecessor relationships that you might use include things like finish-to-finish relationships. The default relationship type is typically going to be a finish-to-start relationship, so you can come in and set one of those as well. And if you'll notice over on the Gantt chart, again, every time we set one of these relationships, the task is going to update to meet that requirement now. So this just gives you an easy way to set up some of this information. And you can also set these up with lead times or lag times by putting in plus or minus so many days to let it know that it actually needs to wait a little while before starting this task to accommodate for things like maybe the foundation needs a little bit of time to dry, or you don't necessarily want to go in and do all of the electrical work or the flooring as the painters are in there, so maybe you want to put in a little bit of lead time or lag time there as well. Now if you do, there's nothing to say that you can't have several tasks that have the same sort of predecessors. You may see that a little bit further down in the schedule, and sometimes you may even need to add in multiple predecessors just to make sure that these things don't overlap too much. This is fairly easily done just by putting in a couple of tasks separated by commas. And this will build several relationships, in which case it's never going to conflict with either of these if it can avoid it. Now, as you saw earlier on, if there is ever a time where it's going to create a conflict or a circular reference of any kind, the system will notify you before it goes into that, so you'll know, and the system is smart enough to recognize these things. So go in and use these predecessors where you can and make sure that they fit well, and this should always help you guys keep on task for everything. Now, of course, this goes into using most of the information that's already here. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll actually find a lot of information available to you through the right-click menu. So let's go ahead and right-click on Site Work at this point and take a look at some of these other options that are going to be available. Now, from the right-click menu, you'll see some of the additional tools here for creating new tasks, which insert tasks, or groups for that matter, into the middle of anywhere on the schedule. You'll also see some of these options like we were looking at earlier for task information, adding in notes, resources, setting predecessors up, and so on. You'll also be able to come through here and move these tasks around using things like the copy, cut, and paste options at the top, or moving up and down on the schedule here as well. You'll even have options to indent and outdent tasks as well, just in case you wanted to outdent them out of the group that they're in, or indent them into another group. So this allows you to move them around on the schedule so that they are either grouped together, which allows you to collapse down that group to make it easier to read, or separate them out from groups in case it's a completely independent task. Now, for those tasks themselves, you also have options to turn those into groups, or you can turn groups into tasks. So there's always going to be options for you to go through and kind of build a better tree or a better structure on the task information side, and watch how that information goes ahead and maps itself out on the Gantt chart to provide you with a more complete schedule. You'll see this information as we navigate down, that it actually branches out a few times in a few different places. Now, this, of course, normally brings up the question of what do we do if we need to figure out what the most critical tasks are to finish that. And some of you probably even recognize the terms critical path, and you'll see those up here at the top on the Project tab. So if we decide to show the critical path, there's a couple of different options on how we can do that. We can either show it all using the relationship arrows, or we can do it including highlighting the tasks themselves. And when you do this, in most cases, it's going to go through and actually show you on the schedule what the critical path is. Now, the critical path is going to be automatically calculating as you're going through the job, so if you don't see one of these updates, it's usually an indication that there is a rogue task somewhere near the end of the schedule who is out here on his own and is the one task that's going to be required completing all by itself near the end. This could be somewhere down here perhaps. And usually what this means is you just need to go through and make sure that you have all of these relationships mapped out. Otherwise, the system isn't going to be able to calculate that critical path for you. So this could be an easy indication that somewhere we have tasks that are on their own and we just need to do some quick updates. As you go through the schedule, though, this will become a lot more evident as you make updates, as you push tasks around, and so on. Now, along those lines, and since we're still in the Project tab up here at the top, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other options that we have here, like shifting project start dates, which allows you to go through and just take this entire schedule and shift it either forward or back in time and have all the different tasks and everything like that follow suit. This makes it significantly easier if you're working with templates and you already create all of your predecessor relationships between these tasks. This just makes it so that all you have to do is go through and update some durations perhaps, or remove tasks that aren't necessary, and shifting the start date to when you're actually going to begin the project becomes a very simple process here. You'll also see some options in this area for doing things like setting baselines. If you come through and set a baseline for this particular schedule, this is going to create a snapshot in time for the schedule, and if you make any additional adjustments or anything afterwards, you'll see the original set from that as well. So let's go ahead and put in something for our initial start. And now let's update some of the tasks in the schedule itself. Let's say that we have to delay this out for a few weeks. And everything else maps forward, and you can actually see where the critical path is now updated itself, which is good. But as you go through and notice, you'll also see some of these after images of where the tasks used to be. And this is because we've got that baseline set, and it's currently the baseline that we're showing. Now, if you don't particularly like the idea of having these after images, you can always set it so that it's not showing any baselines, or you can always come in and clear out these baselines as well. So usually in the templates themselves, I don't have any baselines set. The baselines only come into play once you've assigned a schedule to a job and you're trying to keep track of that information. Now, of course, we've looked at adding a lot of the information and the detail to the schedule itself. Let's look at some of the other options that are actually going to be available up here at the top as well. Now, starting with the File tab, this is obviously the one to the far left, so we'll go ahead and begin here. This is, like most systems, going to include a lot of things like saving, opening new files, closing files, doing the Save As or Save As template, which become pretty prominent as you guys are going through and making adjustments to the schedules that you don't wish to do on every single job. You'll also see some additional options here for importing and exporting to various different file types, like Microsoft Project, Primavera, SureTrack. I believe under the export schedule there's also options to export PDFs and images as well. Now, for those of you who have TotalCare in place and you've subscribed to the ConstructionOnline team accounts or the pro services, you'll also have this option to publish your schedule to ConstructionOnline, where it can be then further updated by anybody in the field using ConstructionOnline, and they may be able to access it through something like any tablets that you guys might be using, iPhones, Androids, anything like that. Just pull it up through the browser and they'll be able to make updates. This information can be downloaded back into ConstructionSuite as well, and we'll touch on that again in just a moment when we go back to taking a look at those files. But this is where you can do a lot of the data exchange for this as well, sharing your schedules and so on. Under the task information, again, this is like we found in the right-click menu, going to include options for things like moving up and down, indenting and outdenting tasks, adding groups, adding tasks, inserting milestones, and so on. Let's skip over the Projects tab again because we've already looked at that. So Tools is going to include a lot of, again, navigation, but you've also got things like jumping to a specific date to take you to that point in the schedule. You can also do things on this part like compressing the schedule or doing chronological sorts. Now, we briefly touched on the ASAP feature, and what some of you guys may have noticed as we're going through the schedule itself is tasks don't always update to the earliest possible start time. And this only happens in most cases if the ASAP feature is turned on for these tasks. Otherwise, you may end up with a few gaps in the schedule, like this. Now, if something like this were to happen, you could always come in and compress the schedule to actually shrink the schedule down to its earliest possible start dates for most of the tasks. The only catch to this is any task that you specifically set will not typically compress because the scheduling system assumes that you've put it there for a reason. So if you try the compress schedule and it doesn't always work, sometimes you may just need to shift one or two tasks and then it'll start to catch up again. In addition to compressing, though, you'll also have an option here to chronologically sort. And what the chronological sort will do is it's going to go through and recognize all the different groups that you guys have at the topmost layer. Planning would be one of these, for example. Project insurance would be one as well. These are not subgroups to anything else. So it's going to organize each of these groups by the group start date, and then it's going to go through the tasks within the group and organize those the same way. Everything should be start to finish, the earliest tasks coming up to the top of the list, and then so on out from there. If we were to use this option right now, you'd probably notice that project insurance is going to get shifted below job site facilities. And this is going to be one of those options for just trying to keep everything a little bit closer in line. Once again, just giving you some better visual appeal, perhaps, to how the schedules themselves are laid out. Now, in addition to this, under the Tools menu, you'll see the Options section. And much like we were looking at the column headers earlier, the options are going to allow you a couple of different settings for showing information on the Gantt chart, like the dollar amounts that we may have synced over from the estimate. You'll also see some additional details like showing task names, resources, completed activities, and so on. So take a look through these if you'd like to change some of the views, maybe. There's also going to be some filter options here, which will show up again in the View menu. This is also where you can go and set observable work days over on the left. This is my work week, Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday I'm not choosing to work. The holidays, on the other hand, are going to be checked off if you wish to observe those. So if you're observing work days, those are checked. If you're observing holidays, those are checked. The difference is these checked options are available on the calendar. these ones show up as those grayed out dates, like Labor Day, for example. There's also going to be exceptions to this in all cases. So if you'd like to add in exceptions, let's say that you're getting close to the end of the job and you need to hurry it up by a couple of days, you could add in maybe a few Saturdays. Or if the owner of the company likes a little bit of time off, maybe he wants to use his birthday as a work holiday or a company holiday, so he might add this in as well. Hopefully that's the case for you guys. We find that it's not for us, so we'll move on. As you get out to the view menu though, like I mentioned, there's going to be some additional options here for kind of filtering through your task information. This includes a few predefined views, which are going to change which columns are going to be available, and whether or not the Gantt chart is going to be available as well. You can see the standard view is going to give you a few columns in the Gantt chart. Task information only is going to just show the task information section. Gantt chart only is going to hide that section and show you just the Gantt chart. So flip back and forth on these and you can see some of the additional information. You'll also see other options in here like showing the critical path or hiding all the tasks that are not on the critical path, filtering by resources, by status, showing only active tasks, and so on and so forth. Under the remaining tabs that we've got here, resources, again, just for filtering down to specific resources or assigning individuals. And reports are going to be where you're going to be taking a lot of the information that we've set up within the schedule and condensing it down into a more easily read or easily digested document. Work orders, for example, are typically going to be a form that pulls everybody's or specific resources labor out of this. So if we were to do a work order for Miller Lumber, which is right here in the middle of the schedule, then it would probably pull out these tasks and possibly anything else that they have on there as well. Some of the other ones include cash flow reports. This is really only going to be useful if you guys have synced up the estimate information so that you could see the dollar amounts filter through that. And you've got a couple of different ways how this could be broken down, maybe by week or by month, but ultimately it should show where you're spending your money and what you can assume is going to be coming up shortly. There's going to be some additional ones like earned value reports based on the percent complete as well, status reports, and even a baseline schedule report to show what kind of impact the delays have been caused as compared to an earlier baseline that you've set. So a couple of options in here for the reports, and my recommendation is if you're curious about one of them, go ahead and generate the report. See what kind of information comes through for those, see what kind of options that you'll have. Like with the baseline schedule report, for example, you can organize it by a couple of different things. And you can even include things like footers and the like in here as well. You'll also have options in any of these reports, much like in the rest of the reports that we looked at in the estimating reporting tool, to edit each of these templates that's available within the schedule. So feel free to step through those reports and see which ones are going to be available, what kind of modifications that you might like to make. And always keep these in mind as you guys are going through and generating the content for these schedules. Now, as you move out to the last tab here, we're talking about the Construction Suite tab. And from here, much like before, this is going to be a lot of the tasks that interact with your projects or with ConstructionOnline. So you can create some new content for your projects here. You can sync up this information with your estimate, perhaps. And this is also where you can go to actually publish this schedule to ConstructionOnline, either as a PDF or into ConstructionOnline's scheduling tools. Now, if you do publish this schedule, it's going to take all of this information and it's going to push it up to ConstructionOnline scheduling system. And you'll typically want to make sure that from then on, you guys check the online schedule for any updates. Those are going to be updated in real time, but ConstructionSuite is always going to maintain this original copy of your schedule just so that you can see where it should have finished if everything went according to plan, which it unfortunately so rarely does. With that in mind, it's usually a good idea to go ahead and keep some extra copies. And as you go through and save these schedules and close them down, you'll see some of these additional copies within the projects themselves, again, down in this lower right-hand corner. So as you create more and more of these schedules, you'll see several more. You'll also be able to see them under the Files tab. You'll see all the different files that are available. And if you ever want to change which schedule is the default, most of this on here can also be done through the right-click menu. Right now I've only got the one, though, so it's going to be our default on this. If you go back up, though, and take a look at the Scheduling tab, from here, as I mentioned, you'll see several of the schedules over on the right-hand section. But just above this, you'll also notice that there's an option to download from ConstructionOnline. Now obviously we'll be exploring this in a little bit more detail as we talk specifically about Construction Online, but when you decide to download from Construction Online, it pulls up a list of all available schedules for you to download. So feel free to go through and check these off as you'd like to pull them down, and you'll see that it does actually give you a date stamp as well. And this is going to be the fastest or easiest way for you to keep track of which schedules are going to be available at any given time. So from here, you can always pull down an updated copy of the schedule, and that way you can know exactly what kind of changes or adjustments have been made over time, either by week or by month or whatever frequency you'd like. Now, of course, a lot of you guys are going to be working within ConstructionSuite to update your schedules as well. Maybe you go out to the job site and you find certain percentages complete or something like that. Maybe a few tasks are a little bit behind schedule. And in this case, you can always open up your schedules back here in ConstructionSuite as well. And in the task information side, you'll have a few different options for pulling in this information in the detail to keep track of it a little bit better. Now, we talked briefly about the percent complete column and some of the information that's going to be occurring as a result of this. But you can always make changes to this percent complete by clicking into the cell and then just typing in the percentage that you'd like to use. In this case, if we decide to go with 100%, you'll see it represented as such. You might also notice that the group is now 25% complete because we've got 4 active tasks in here, and one of those is now 100%, which means that a fourth of this is done. As you go through and do additional updates to the percent complete column, it will continue updating the group. You'll even see the checked off icon showing up over on the left side. What you may not have noticed yet, though, is that each of these tasks on the Gantt chart is going to start to fill in with a little bar across the task based on that percent complete. Now, using this information, you can see that a lot of these first tasks are already at 100%. You can see that over here as well. We've got a couple of tasks here that are 100% as well. And if you move down a little bit, these have varying different percent completes. At the top, it looks like it's about a quarter done, 25%. As you move down to the next one, we're halfway done, and so on. So you can actually see these percentages over here, and you can represent the same thing on these existing tasks as well as they happen. Now, of course, as I mentioned, there may be some other things that come up as well. Maybe delays that happen to the tasks as well. And rather than going through and trying to figure out new start dates or anything like that, you can always come over to the Gantt chart and simply highlight the task that you want to update and then drag it out to its new start time. Now again, the schedule is going to allow me to do this because I can always move my tasks around to set them to new dates. If we had the ASAP feature set, it would give us the option to turn that off as well. So this is a quick and easy way to get most of this information laid out for the tasks. And again, if you want to go back through and take a look at the baseline, you can always show the baseline to see where some of these things were when we first began the tasks and how the updates are actually impacting most of this information. Now, as we move down through the tasks as well, you'll notice that my critical path is still showing entirely in red. And some of you may want to use some other color coding, perhaps, to represent tasks that are a little bit more important or a little bit more critical than others. In this case, if we go back into the task information for these tasks, the top right corner actually has a little drop-down list for different colors that are going to be available for these tasks. Now, of course, we've got some basic colors up here at the top. So if you wanted to do payments as green tasks, or you wanted to set certain other tasks like lengthy ones in dark blue, maybe tasks that require some form of supervision perhaps in black, or something along these lines. You've got tons of little options here for those, and clicking OK allows you to create different color codes or different color combinations for the tasks that are going to be available here. Now, if you wanted to change the color codes as a whole for everything that we have in ConstructionSuite, this is also going to be one of the options that you have under the Projects menu. Maybe the kind of a charcoal colored milestones and the light blue for the tasks it's just not quite what you were hoping for. Well, if you look under the Project tab, you'll actually see a couple of different combinations for predefined color codes here as well. So in this case, if you wanted to go through and change some of the color information, you certainly can. but most of your custom settings are still going to be maintained. It's never going to go back through and try to alter this because it's assuming that these color codes are important for you for a reason. Same holds true for the critical path. Since I selected to show the critical path tasks in this other color, this means that they're not going to be adjusting away from that either. These critical tasks are always going to be in the red for me, and this just gives me an easier way to go through and recognize this. So once again, setting up some of this information on the Gantt chart just gives you a really easy way to kind of digest these details. But as you go through and save them, they will show up back in your project. Let's go back to Lot 185 Baldwin Park, under the Activities section. In my case, I've updated a little bit too far, so we don't have too many upcoming. But you can always come back to the calendar and take a look at them here on the week views as well. So if we scroll down a little bit, here they are populating again. There's some Lot 185 Baldwin Park, and so on through. As I mentioned, I've got several different schedules running here, so we can filter this list down to a specific project or a group of projects. And there we can see my tasks coming together. And if you change through the views, you'll see how this information becomes a little bit easier to work with or digest. Let's see if we can actually get into somewhere on here to pull up one of these weeks that has some information. And some of you guys actually might have noticed that little shortcut as well. Down here on the calendar, you can actually select and drag over a given set of dates. And this will highlight all of the information that fits that date selection here. It's kind of like the month view or the week view or something like that, except you can go through and select specific sets instead. You don't have to conform to one of the predefined views if you just want to use these kind of options. Much like this, if we switch back over to the list view, in the top right corner, you can actually define what date range you'd like to look at. Here. And this is going to go through and show me all the tasks that I mapped out over that area. And it's a little bit more like the task information section, except from here, we can also group these tasks together and drag some of the information for specific projects perhaps up to the top. Or we can simplify it a little bit further, like filtering down to a specific contact within these projects to show resources for each of these individuals. And this becomes a very easy way to kind of filter through the list to show who's working on what at any given time. So for those of you who are trying to put together smaller scale schedules, maybe you've got just a couple of guys that work down in a manufacturing area, perhaps, or are putting together a few orders or what have you, you can always filter it out like this, expand these sections, and then simply print this screen and hang it on the wall to show everybody what their responsibilities are for the week. This is going to be similar but slightly updated on ConstructionOnline. As I mentioned, we'll be covering that in a little bit more detail as we move forward with the webinar series covering ConstructionOnline and some of the specifics like GamePlan within that. But by and large, this is actually going to cover most of the details that we have available for our webinar today. And once again, thank you for joining us, though. It's been a pleasure having you all here, and if I can help any in the future, again, my name is Ian with UDA Technologies, and have a great afternoon.